Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's move on to public comments. Mr. Doyle, have we got, how many we had today?
We have one public commenter, Mr. Chair.
You ready?
Yes, how much time can we allow?
Let's do 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. Our speaker today is Joni Nikki Sterner, who will discuss indoor air quality.
We're just come right up here? Okay. It's my first meeting. So nervous. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm here to ask to implement a program called IAQ. It's Indoor Air Quality Tools for Schools. It's made through the Environmental Protection Agency. You're probably wondering why I'm here. I am very passionate about indoor air quality because my family has lived in a home that was built on a crawl space, and one of the air ducts down in the crawl space was unattached. So over the course of two years, our family breathed in crawl space air, which has mold and moisture down there. So all of our stuff was contaminated by this air, and we had to move out and, get rid of all of our stuff, basically 90% of our things. And so we're all extremely sensitive to mold and moisture and air quality issues. When I walk into a building, I can smell and sense if there's chemicals, if there's fragrance, if there is mold in there. And I know I have 2 daughters that are going to Dodgen next year. And I've spoken with numerous teachers throughout the school district. And I know that, we have a lot of aging buildings in the district, and we need to have a connection from the district level to the school level, because I've spoken with some wonderful people at the district. Marvin, who's in charge of, he's an assistant in the indoor air quality department. Wonderful guy, told me about all of your resources that you have, really, really good stuff. And we need to connect the district level to the school level. And I feel like I could be someone, or whoever you choose, to go into the schools and educate the staff and the students on how they can help take care and maintain these schools, because we're not going to be able to rebuild every single school. And we have a lot of schools. I've looked on the website at the list of schools that you have, and we have lots of them that were built in 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's going to get expensive really quick. And we need to keep the indoor air quality up so that our kids can stay in the classroom learning and not having to miss because they have asthma or allergy attacks that are going on. And I have 2 kids that have allergies since we've moved here 7 years ago. And it's crazy here, the allergies. I know, in the springtime especially, my son can't even go outside for recess. I've put that in, and a lot of children shouldn't be out during those pollen days that are so heavily counted. And there's just a lot of things that I feel like I've been through that I want to share, and I want to get into the schools and help these kids to stay in the classroom, because I loved school growing up, and I know that kids want to be in there learning, and when they're sick and the air quality that they're breathing isn't good enough for them to... Sorry, am I done? 30 seconds, okay. So when they're in there, I want to keep them in there. I want to keep them learning. And that's good for our budget too. We need our kids in the school so that we can be reimbursed for that. It's a win-win situation, and it's just critical for the health of our schools and our children and our staff. So I'm here. Use me. I want to do this. So thank you. 2, 1. All right. Any questions? I probably am not supposed to ask that. No? Do I hit the road now? Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sterner. Okay. Next, we have the approval of the minutes from the May 17th Budget Public Forum meeting, the May 17th, 2018 board meeting, and the June 5th, 2018 called meeting. If there are no objections to approval, they are approved. We are now ready to go with board business. Let's begin with the Facilities Technology Oversight Committee. Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee met on Tuesday, May the 29th, 2018. The committee reviewed the previously board-approved projects, Varner Elementary School, the cooler and freezer replacement, Harrison High School Gym and Theater, Walton High School completion of Stage 2, Phase 2, Performing Arts and Athletic Spaces, Osborne High School rebuild, and no nominations were made for the vacant position of secretary on the committee. That's my report. Mr. Chairman, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Any questions? Okay, Mr. Morgan with the summer bridge update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this board agenda item up. I think this might be year 3 or 4, maybe 3, for our summer bridge program, and it was born out of this. It was born out of a common theme that I hear in talking with parents, teachers, citizens, especially in my post, is that especially teachers and principals mostly would be, we make so many gains during the school year with children, regardless to where they might start, and then they go home for summer break, and a large chunk of what we have gained they lose because there is not a lot of educational enrichment opportunities for them, regardless to where they might be on the spectrum of learning or achievement. So we started a summer bridge program, and where schools and students have the opportunity to focus in on whether it's literacy, whether it's math, or whatever the case might be. And I think we've grown the program in a sense of, because what's really important to me is not just to have a program to say we do something with some kids during the summer, but to find out, are we being successful in what our objective is, which is to make sure that it's a summer bridge between the time you leave whatever school until the school year starts back. Now, finding out if it's successful is not an easy feat. How do we know? Are we tracking these kids? Are we monitoring these kids? What's the curriculum and things of that nature? So I guess my primary purpose of bringing this is to find out, A, what schools are having summer bridge programs this summer, what's the focus, and how are we gauging success or effectiveness of this program? Because I think at very minimum, we're doing, $100K? $100,000 for this summer bridge program. So I'm excited and eager to hear what information the superintendent and his staff might bring forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Morgan and the board. To answer your question, the board received a board update on May 30th, 2018, with a list of the schools as well as some of their priorities. Primarily, accelerated learning to address achievement as well as some experiential learning was listed. To help everybody understand, the Summer Bridge was a competitive grant opportunity within the district where schools can apply for up to $10,000 to fund summer learning experiences for unidentified students in grades K2, rising 6th, and rising 9th grade students. So you're really addressing students that you're wanting to close an achievement gap, as well as give them an opportunity to settle into a new learning environment and assist that transition so that it's a bit smoother sometimes. We have a total of 18 schools that applied, 11 elementary, 4 middle school, 3 high school. We had 11 schools that were awarded the grant, 8 elementary, 2 middle, and 1 high, a total of $97,268.40. 80% of those that received the grant do qualify as a Title I. Approximately 496 students are being served by these programs at a minimum based on what the schools anticipated their enrollment to be. There are approximately 386 face-to-face additional instructional hours through these programs. To answer your question about the effectiveness and the impact of the investment, we monitor over the summer as well as over the course of the 18-19 school year through a multitude of data points, including the reading inventory and foundational reading assessment, the math inventory, end of grade, end of course assessments, math and reading pre and post tests, beginning of summer, end of summer, the EIP participation and checklist data, discipline data, attendance data, student perception data, parent perception report card, and promotion retention data. So we start the summer, and each school, depending on what their focus is, monitors where they started and where they end the summer. But then a more important question to us is, over the course of the next year, have those students transitioned and maintained what we've tried to accomplish by bolstering that instructional time and that support during the summer? So we have end of the summer data, which of course we want to suggest that time was well spent. But we also are looking at those students, and depending, for example, one of the schools is looking at the transition and wants to know, do those students have less discipline issues? Are they attending school more regularly? And so that'll be an ongoing evaluation that we do throughout the year to determine return on investment and the impact of this time spent and these funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The different, lack of a better word, metrics that you name between reading inventory, math inventory, discipline, how much of that was added for this summer bridge in comparison to lab? Because I know it's been bolstered, but what have we added for this in terms of metrics, effectiveness, success, to evaluate those things in comparison to last summer bridge program?
About August of last year, when we gave you an update on the Summer Bridge program, that was one of the things that the board wanted to ask, and so we really have asked in the grant application. We've worked with those schools that applied to really identify those particular data points, knowing that those students that participate, not only are we looking at how they end the summer, but what does it look like a year from now for those students, and was the impact what we intended? So to answer your question, I have a spreadsheet, so each school had to commit to which data points they will be watching over the course of this year, and they actually will submit that to us, which the district will then use to evaluate effectiveness and try to replicate things that really are the most effective.
Final question, I hope. So this time next summer, we should have a good amount of data on what metric points were hit and to what degree about what's happening this summer. Next summer, we should be able to say, whether it's reading inventory, math inventory, discipline, whatever the case might be, we should be able to hone in and say at blah, 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 elementary school kids, these are the metrics that we're able to gauge or monitor or evaluate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We plan as the year. For example, one of the high schools is looking at end of course, so some of those students will take end of course at the end of first semester. So some of that data we will have mid-year, and some of that we will have the end of the year, but ultimately we want this investment to be about the student is better off a year from now, and maintained what we brought them up in that short amount of time during the summer. We want them to still be ahead of the curve a year from now and not slipping back. So we will monitor all year, but some of that information will be monitored mid-year in addition to end of the year.
A lot. What would stop, or what would prevent a school that's, let's just say, not doing as well as we want that school to do, to not apply for the grant? Like, how many schools you said applied?
We had approximately 18 that applied. One of the things that does matter is that a lot of our Title I schools in particular will plan to use some of their Title I money for summer learning. For example, they will do budget meetings to set their budget for this coming school year in the month of July. A lot of those schools will determine where their needs are, and if closing some of those achievement gaps in the summer. Some of these schools are using some of this grant money to go with their Title I money, and some of those schools already had Title I money budgeted. So this doesn't represent the total availability of summer. This just represents in the Summer Bridge program specifically.
Okay. And the May 30th email that you sent, that has the schools or whatnot that receive money for this year, right?
Yes, sir, and it has what their program focus was, the targeted audience, so that you would know what grades, as well as the length of the program and the grant amount that they received.
Okay. I certainly appreciate the work, and I like the methodical nature in which we're improving what we have every year to gauge what we're doing, how effectively we're doing it, especially during this 8-week break for students. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Ms. Thayer?
Thanks, Jennifer. Good report. Correct me if I missed some things. Are you saying that this current year will be the first time, this upcoming year will be the first time we have tried to measure success of the summer programs?
No, ma'am, because this is going into the third. A lot of times what we started with was pre and post. So when those students showed up, either through perception data or a pre and post that school would have developed, but over the course of those couple weeks or so, they would know where those students ended. But really, the goal of this program is to close those gaps and make sure
Right.
that maintains throughout the year. So we've extended it a bit.
So
to
that was
really
my
be
question. We
systematic.
didn't follow them through the year.
Right, we didn't, schools did not have to report by end of the year, where are these students performing? So we've really gone in and shored some of
So
that
this will
up.
be the first time we have followed them through the year to see if during the instructional year they made progress.
Right, that if we
okay.
set them on a good path in August,
Yeah,
did they
which is
maintain that?
Right, which is the main thing we're concerned about. Okay. And so is it correct that Title I schools could still apply for the grant? Because you said some did and some didn't. But they
Any
all
school
could
can
have.
apply, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do we know the number of schools or which schools had some type of summer program?
I don't have that information with me today, but I can certainly get that and follow up with you.
If you could let us know just through an email or something which schools had summer programs, that might help. Just I don't know, that
Absolutely.
could vary. It could be a week here or there, so I'm not sure that really how much that tells us, but it just seems like many of our Title I schools should probably have some effort, wouldn't you think?
And
Summer.
some of them do have enrichment, some of them will have accelerated intervention. I think it's also worth noting that the district has put a lot of time and energy into the summer link resources that we've shared with you previously, and all the students in elementary and middle. Parents were mailed home a postcard, and it had the QR code and the link, and you could
Right.
go and get free resources both online as well as things to print off. So we also wanted to make sure parents who may not send their students to something in the summer, but were looking for those resources, have
Right.
free resources to be able to do that supports them in helping their student.
Right.
But we'll get that information for
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thayer. Mr. Banks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lawson, I do remember 3 years ago where I think we had a $100,000 grant, and we used only about 13,000 of it. So we've come a long ways as far as utilizing available funds. Now, the question is, correct me if I have a different or a wrong understanding. Title I money and bridge money cannot be integrated. Is that correct?
You could have a Title I school who has a need and budgets some of their Title I dollars. We did not exclude Title I schools from being able to apply for this money. So I could have had a program that I needed was going to run $5,000, and this supplemented another $10,000 because it was on top. So nobody was excluded. All schools could apply.
So you're saying that Title I money can be integrated with bridge money?
The two can be used. What would have been a problem would have been to say title schools could not apply for the grant.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you're getting at supplementing and supplanting, the argument for Title I, and this is definitely not supplanting.
Okay,
Yeah,
because I
definitely.
know I've had some discussions about why aren't we using more bridge money or other sources of funds along with our Title I money, and what I've been told is you can't integrate. And there may be a lot of different circumstances why you can't.
There are many different circumstances. The easiest example to describe supplementing and supplanting is if we're doing something for every school, you can't use Title I funds at a school to do that instead of general funds. So it's not like we can say, oh, well, we're giving this to every school, but Title I school, we're not going to give it to you because you got Title I money. That's supplanting.
Okay.
Yeah, so as long as you're supplementing Title I funds
Okay.
for what you're already doing.
From a
that's-
different source.
Yeah, so you can take Title I funds, for example, and supplement what you're already getting general fund from the district with. Okay, if that makes sense. So you can expand the utilization or the implementation of a program, whatever Title I schools are able to do with Title I funds, even if we're doing that, for example, if we were doing the SI and MI, RI and MI, and Title I schools wanted to pay to do that an additional 2 or 3 times, even though district general funds are being used to implement that RI and MI, you can still use Title I funds to do additional implementations of that, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the easy.
But what you're saying is everybody has the opportunity from a general fund, but you can supplement on top of that Title I money.
That's correct.
Okay, I understand that. Now, from my experience, I've got Sedalia Park has a large Brazilian population, so English language is a priority for them. And so they have a summer program they started several years ago. And of course, they're adding a different grade, additional grade each year. Do these programs correlate with the bridge programs, or are they 2 separate programs altogether?
They could be the same in the sense that, for example, your example of Sedalia Park, they could apply for the grant for the students to help offset the cost of what they're already doing. But you could also have a program that had not budgeted any one of their title dollars, applied for the grant, received it, and is offering the same program. So you could have either one, just depends on what they had budgeted for. You heard me say that the title schools will be budgeting in July for what happens next June. So they've already got a plan for how they're going to spend it. And some may have said, summer learning is a priority for us and we want to close the gap and we want to work with this grade level or these students. And so they may have put some funds aside for that. And then they may also choose in January, when we open the window for the Summer Bridge Grant, they may apply for some of those. Not all of our schools every year take the full $10,000. Sometimes schools will apply for $4,500, for $8,000, depending on what they're looking for. The max just happened to be $10,000.
Who actually conducts these classes in the schools for the Summer Bridge and for any other summer programs?
Typically, it is the certified staff that works in that school.
Okay.
The teachers receive supplemental pay to come in and work.
So
with
we
these
don't have to
students.
bring in outside people.
No, sir.
We have a resource available to us.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And are we limited to 100,000, or can you go higher than that?
It's something that the board could look at. That just happened to be at the inception of this idea, the amount that was set aside for this purpose that we have protected.
Does this come from the state, this 100,000? Where does it come from?
It's general fund.
Oh, okay, so we're funding it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, very interesting. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Lawson, great report. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the report that you shared with the board back in just a short while ago. I think it's the May 30th report. I'm just curious as to how many students are actually taking part in these programs. For example, like Campbell High School, I mean, how many students are in Campbell High School are actually participating in the program?
What I can do is I can get that information broken down by school. What we did is, based on the application of what the school was anticipating, based on the number of classes or courses and teachers. And so the number I've given you is what they were anticipating, but as the summer continues and these finish, we could absolutely circle back around and let you know the number of students that in fact did choose to participate.
So students, can they enter at their own timing, or is that how it works?
They are, for example, when you look at a particular school, I'm looking at an elementary school, and theirs was for 2 weeks. They were doing 2 hours per day, and they had designated weeks that they had worked with their community, their parents, and their students to have them come during that set time. So there is a beginning and an end time to it.
And where I'm going with this, you probably are already anticipating this, is my feeling would be is that if the participation levels are low, is the money well spent? Secondly, is that that we're not necessarily going to see a bump in overall performance for the school as far as their end of course tests, simply because the sample may be small. So I'm just curious what the enrollment numbers look like.
And
to kind of learn more about the efficacy of the program. And listen, I fully support, these types of programs, but I also want to understand the efficacy of the programs as well.
And I think those are great questions, Mr. Sweeney. I think the schools really work with their communities to have them narrow down to enough of a time that families commit so that you're not asking them to come for 6 or 8 weeks and give up their whole summer. So developmentally, they've looked at limiting times that parents will commit to being there 100%. I do understand the concern that you have a small population that may not impact the numbers overall, and I think to Mr. Morgan's point, that's why it's important that we have the students who have participated. We're evaluating how it's impacted those individual students, both short-term and long-term, so that we would see, are there places where we need to replicate, sustain based on what's most effective? So we'll dig a little deeper down simply because of the sample size to determine some of the efficacy and effectiveness.
And as far as the personnel that are leading these, are these certified teachers that are leading these programs?
Yes, sir. They are typically the teachers within that school during the regular school year who are interested in coming during the summer to do this.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Anyone else? Next, we have the superintendent's report. Mr. Ragsdale. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Morgan, the Pebblebrook Feeder Program.
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that. Again, Mr. Chair, if you so happen to live in the Pebblebrook feeder pattern currently, and let's just say you're zoned to attend Riverside Primary. Riverside Primary is kindergarten, first grade. You leave Riverside Primary, and then you go to Riverside Intermediate, which is second and fifth. You leave Riverside Intermediate, and then you go to the sixth grade academy. That's 3 different schools. You leave the sixth grade academy, and then you're most likely going to attend Lindley 7th and 8th grade academy. You leave there, your final stop is Pebblebrook High School. It's 5 different schools just going through that Pebblebrook feeder pattern. And it's something that's not lost upon the community and people who have children that's doing that much transitioning K to 12. So it's my hope, and Ms. Superintendent, that we can somehow reduce that number. I think, I don't know if I'm too old school, but it seems like you leave an elementary, you go to a middle, you leave a middle, you go to a high. 3 as opposed to 5. So I wanted to bring this board agenda item to see what type of feedback I can get from the superintendent on his staff about the feasibility of reducing that, and if so, what kind of timeline might we be looking at to accomplish that?
Yeah, so timing is good as far as looking at this, because as the board knows and the public knows, the rebuilding of, or the building of the Clay Harmony Leland School is one of the first projects out of SPLOST 5 construction-wise. So we will go ahead and start looking at this and then bring something back to the board within the next few months. I'm not going to say a specific timeline, but within the next few months, we should be able to bring something back to the board and kind of talk about the feasibility, because obviously when you start taking into account, and we've done this at other primary and intermediate schools that we have throughout the county, to where we convert those to K-5s. So there are some moving pieces that have to be taken into consideration, especially at the primary schools, because everything is to scale, and so K1 versus K5 is a little bit different. So there are some funding issues with that. So we will do a thorough analysis of the entire feeder pattern and then bring a report back to the board within the next few months.
Cool.
Let me end with keeping in mind that if it is possible, feasible to do something, we would plan to do that in that opening of the Clay Harmony Leland School, because that would take into account that entire feeder as well.
So it's not that, we're going to be bringing a report back to the board within the next few months and then take action. It will be, construction will take 12 to 18 months for the elementary school, and then that would be implemented during that time, should the board wish to do that. All right, cool. Thank you. Mr. Scammahorn, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Morgan's looking for some feedback. I just have a couple of questions. One is, if we might, and I'm not saying it's idealistic, so I'm not advocating or defending. I'm just looking for information. One is the kids, students, as they move from one physical building to the next, are they split up? Do we know?
Yeah, so let me say, generally speaking, no, because if you're going to Lindley Sixth Grade Academy, you only have one stop option. That's the next stop, and that's Lindley Middle, because of the way the attendance zone is constructed. The only possibility, and somebody jump in if I'm speaking inappropriately or incorrectly, is from an elementary school. It's possible, I would think, that some elementary schools in that attendance zone could be going to a middle school, i.e. maybe Smitha, versus Lindley 6th and Lindley 7th, 8th. Now, don't swear me to that, but I'm just going to say that would be the only potential, I believe, because if you're at Lindley 6th Grade Academy, your next stop is Lindley 7th, 8th. It's not going to be any other middle school. And then from Lindley 7th, 8th, you go to Pebblebrook. So generally speaking, no, but we will double check to see if I'm off.
I'm really just trying to, and in my growing up, and I came from a broken home, I went to several elementary schools and a couple of junior high schools and 2 high schools. But kids are resilient, and I'm not sure from a logistical standpoint, if I have 2, 3, 4 children and they're stair-stepped, then I'm trying to get them from one facility to the next. But I'm not sure that there's a distinct disadvantage, and is anybody advocating there is, that you have to change a physical building, in a couple of years, or the 1 year on the 6th Grade Academy, but still. So that's what I'm wondering. I don't know I'm not going to put Mr. Morgan on the spot or anybody, but if anybody has any comments, ideally, it'd be nice to maybe have K through 12 in one building, but that's not the way it is. So I don't know what the disadvantages are here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scammahorn. Ms. Thayer, you have a question?
Those elementary schools are not in my post, so I don't have any direct information on those. But Lindley 6 is in my post, and it's my impression from input from the community and teachers and so forth in the area that the 6th Grade Academy is serving a very needed. It's very useful in the developmental process of students, and that it's serving a good purpose there. Has always been the input that I've received. And I know you didn't address the middle school, Mr. Ragsdale, but you did, Mr. Morgan, and I was just going to say, my input from everyone is that Lindley 6 needs to remain. So I didn't want to have that out here and spread among the public to get people concerned. I don't think we're talking about doing away with that part, are we, at this point?
Well, when I was addressing the Riversides, I was just using that as an example. So I think Mr. Morgan has asked that we look at the entire feeder pattern, which we will do, but I'm not prepared to say either way. It may come back and we say, look, it's going to be too much of a cost to even address any of it.
But I hope that we will we're not looking at just cost, we're looking at developmentally and
yes.
Determining whether that school in itself is working effectively in that population and for those kids.
The biggest factor in this is going to be facility. Is determining what the facility can do. So if, for example, Lindley 6th grade academy is much smaller than Lindley 7th, 8th. And if you were going to try to turn both of those facilities into a middle school 6, 7, 8, you're going to have some different challenges that's going to produce itself into attendance zone requirements and those kind of things. So there are many, many moving pieces that, again, I'm not prepared to say pros and cons of anything, because it just may not be feasible to do anything different. Because, again, like looking at the Riversides, for example, they're very close in proximity. So, okay, what is that going to look like from an attendance zone perspective if you make both of those K-5? Is it going to be more, is it going to be more trouble than it's worth to go through that exercise of turning those schools into a K-5 from a K-1 to a 2-5? So all of those questions we need to do a thorough analysis on and take input from both staff and the community in that analysis before we can come back and bring an answer.
But did I hear you say that facility would be the main consideration,
No, I
not
said
student performance?
one of the biggest factors will be the facility, because if the facility can't handle what you're wanting to do, then everything else is moot. So what we're looking at is there's many different factors in it, and again, our primary concern is student achievement. So looking at what we can accomplish as far as moving student achievement forward, if the feasibility is that that's not going to be impacted, well then, again, to me, everything is moot.
Well, that was what my concern was. I kept hearing facilities and things of that nature, but student performance should come in there somewhere. If it is determined, and I don't know, I can't say that I can determine it, but if it's determined that that is an effective model for that area, then we would look long and hard at that before we would consider changing anything that was there. If it's working effectively, that was my only concern. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thayer. Mr. Sweet, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent, a lot of this, too, I think, is also going to be driven on how the demographics of the communities change. I mean, fortunately, we're updating our demographic studies on an annual basis. It'll show us where the populations are growing. Considering that we're just entering in SPLOST 5 in 2019, if there's facility, let's say, considerations, you're probably looking at SPLOST 6. Is that a fair assessment?
If there would be major modifications required to accomplish anything, then yes. And I would not, just going out on a limb and making a prediction, I'm going to say that even if it was feasible to do everything, it wouldn't be done in 1 year. Yeah. It would be spaced out. So to your point, if any of that is going to be requiring modifications to a significant degree, then certainly the next SPLOST would have to be the funding source for that, because obviously it's not in SPLOST 5.
Got it. And Mr. Banks and I were on the board when the last major reorganization was done, and I recall there being a series of public hearings relative to attendance zone modifications and things like that. Can you speak to that as well?
Yep, we're very fortunate to have the only legislation that dictates what you have to do for redistricting in Cobb County. So we are required by legislation to hold public input forums when we're going to be doing redistricting. So as you mentioned, the last one was when we closed Brown and Skyview, and then opened Austell. So we had numerous public input sessions for that redistricting, and then that was accomplished. And it does get the community involved, and certainly at the elementary level, it's a little bit easier to do redistricting to justify numbers, because you're very cognizant of class size at the elementary level. So that being said, once those sessions were done and the redistricting was accomplished, we were very fortunate that we maintained Brown Elementary as a building, because we have used it for 2 schools thus far, for both Teasley during its construction and then King Springs during its overcrowding and subsequent following up construction.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And then I apologize to Mr. Morgan because I failed to mention that he was on the board during that time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Scanlon, do you have a question? I said, did you have a question?
Well, yes, and a comment, if I can. Can I put the comment on there, too?
You can do both.
Okay. And Ms. Thayer, thank you. You said it better than I. That when I mentioned disadvantages and advantages, I mean student achievement and whatever, but not just the physical layout. So, but the other thing I wanted to ask, too, is if we're going to look at this, I mean, we're talking about 5 buildings that they go to. Well, don't we have 5 high schools that have 9th grade academies? Is it 5 at this point? Anybody know? Well, okay. Multiple. Well, Mr. Morgan left, but that if you count that academy as a separate facility, that means those students go to 4. Elementary, middle, 9th grade academy, and then the high school. So we're only one off from, the other one. So anyway, if that could be part of the consideration, and I can say it's open for debate, but I question how beneficial the 9th grade academies are. I think many of those perceived advantages could have been incorporated into the middle schools. And is that not what a middle school is really supposed to be doing, is transitioning, from adolescence to young adulthood to high school? So, and I'm not proposing that we change the system. I'm just saying that there are similarities and there are things that we can live with that do just fine. Since Mr. Morgan's not here, I'll yield back, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Let me just follow up. When we look at the analysis, I'm definitely not saying that, we need to do away with these transitions. But we will do an analysis with an open mind of, okay, is it feasible to look at this? We'll bring it back to the board with some potential paths, and then we can take it from there.
Well, and one more comment too is if some of our schools need to be increased and we need to look at acquiring property adjacent to those schools, that could be a long-term project where we're monitoring what's going on with community development, who's moving in, who's moving out, things like that. I think that would be important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Okay. We do have the superintendent's report now, Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm going to ask Mr. Brad Johnson to come and bring the next presentation. I'm sure he'll be introducing the auditor, but the SPLOST 4 performance audit.
Good afternoon, board. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board. Each year, the district engages in an array of independent financial auditors to assess the financial condition of the district. It's important for Cobb citizens to know that taxpayer funds are professionally handled, and it is important that an independent party perform these audit functions. This is the time of the year where our SPLOST program, SPLOST 4 specifically, is reviewed from a performance standpoint. And we have auditors here today to present their audit opinion of the SPLOST operations and financial controls for the SPLOST 4 program as of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017. The primary objective of the performance audit of educational sales tax expenditures is to determine that sales tax dollars are being dispersed efficiently and economically so that the school district receiving the funds is obtaining the maximum benefit possible from the tax dollars collected. This is achieved through the design and execution of a series of audit procedures which our external auditor has completed and will present today. This audit is different from a regular financial audit, where the ultimate purpose for an independent professional auditor examines the district's accounting records and delivers an opinion of the financial statements and determines are they fairly presented. Interesting to note, though, that the SPLOST program is also audited from the financial perspective during the annual audit that we present in January. So the SPLOST program is basically audited twice every year. The performance audit that we're going to present today has several objectives. One is to determine if the construction projects and equipment purchases were executed in accordance with the SPLOST 4 resolution approved by the Cobb County Board of Education. Next objective is to verify that the school board has established and adhered to specific policies regarding acquisitions and approvals of the selection of contractors for its construction projects and vendors for significant purchases. Objective 3 is to verify that management is monitoring the progress of construction projects through a routine status checks on site. Objective 4, to verify that there is effective communication to the Board of Education on the status of SPLOST 4 projects. And objective number 5, to determine that SPLOST 4 funds are being deposited in accordance with Georgia law and to determine if proceeds are invested in a manner that yields a competitive investment return for the school district. The Financial Services Division works very closely with the SPLOST Operations Department throughout the year to make sure that SPLOST projects are properly implemented and financially recorded in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Mr. Tom Marshall is our financial director over the SPLOST capital projects accounting. He works very closely with Mr. Nick Parker on all SPLOST projects, working hand in hand to smoothly coordinate capital projects in the school district. And I want to thank both of them for the work that they do throughout the year. Today, Mr. Christian Hatch of the CPA firm of Williamson and Company CPAs from Cartersville, Georgia, is attending our board work session to present his firm's SPLOST 4 performance audit results and conclusions. Each of you has a copy at your desk of the most recent performance audit prepared by the audit firm. After having examined the document myself, Mr. Chair, I think the board probably will be pleased with the district's performance regarding our SPLOST program. But because this is an independent audit, I will keep my remarks summarized and instead let Mr. Hatch present the audit and his findings. So with that introduction, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request that Mr. Hatch approach the podium to make his presentation to the board.
Mr. Hatch.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Williamson & Company CPAs, I'd like to thank the Cobb County School Board and members of management for engaging us to conduct the performance audit of the SPLOST 4 program for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2017. Our audit was performed in accordance with performance audit standards set forth by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. The objective of our audit was to determine to the maximum extent possible that the school district is using the tax dollars collected from the SPLOST 4 program efficiently and economically in order to maximize the benefit from those tax proceeds. The procedures we performed to obtain our opinion involved updating our understanding of the school district's policies and procedures as they relate to the SPLOST 4 program, then performing test work on various aspects of the program, such as disbursements, procurements, and cash management. Test work including examining a sample of SPLOST 4 disbursements recorded during the year to determine the expenditures were recorded in the correct period for the correct amount, and most importantly, allowable under the approved SPLOST 4 resolution. Throughout the course of our audit, we found no instances of unallowed or improperly recorded disbursements for the audit period as they relate to the district's SPLOST 4 program. We also examined bid packages, project progress reports, bank statements, and minutes of meetings of the school board and the Facilities and Technology Oversight Committee to achieve our objectives and obtain our assurance on the SPLOST 4 program. As a result of our performance audit procedures, we have concluded that for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2017, the SPLOST 4 program of the Cobb County School District operated within the guidelines set forth by the state of Georgia and the local resolution passed by the voters and approved by the school board. SPLOST 4 collections for the audit period
were $134.4 million. Total collections for the first 4 years of the program were $504 million. Collections on the SPLOST 4 program will end December 31st, 2018. SPLOST 4 expenditures for the audit period were $150.2 million. Total expenditures for the first 4 years of the program are $449.5 million. Some of the more significant SPLOST 4 construction projects during the audit period were roof replacements at multiple educational facilities, cooler and freezer upgrades at multiple cafeterias, and new construction projects at Brumby, East Cobb, Osborne, and Walton schools. In summary, we feel that the Cobb County School District has put in place effective policies and procedures to ensure that the SPLOST 4 dollars collected are being held and expended appropriately within the guidelines set forth by the state of Georgia, and the expenditures are allowable under the voter-approved resolution. That concludes my presentation of the performance audit of the school district's SPLOST 4 program for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2017. If there are any questions, I can try to answer those now, or you can contact me anytime after today's meeting. I'll get you an answer as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Banks?
Yours is probably more intelligent than mine.
My question's not for the auditor, but for John Adams about teachers that should hold back on that.
Yeah, let's wait.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Point of curiosity, how do you determine your sample size?
Sample size, we take the population of the disbursements for the year. If the typical procedure is if you've got a population over 250, then you need a sample size of at least 25. 25 didn't give us enough coverage, monetarily, so we bump up the sample size to get a good monetary coverage. And so I think our monetary coverage was right around 35%. Ended up being 63 total transactions.
Hey, thank you. Now, how many of you all knew that? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is board agenda items. Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Agenda item number 1 is the monthly occurring recommendation for authorization of school properties disposal, and the board has received that list of property to be disposed of electronically. Happy to answer any questions.
Consent. Consent. Ms. Gordon. Number 2.
All right, number 2, I'm going to ask Mr. York to come forward and bring this, since it is a policy revision.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board, agenda item number 2 is a recommendation for the adoption of revisions to Board Policy GAAA, Equal Opportunity Employment, and Board Policy GAEB, Harassment, as part of the G section of the Cobb County Board of Education Policy Manual. We've reworked some of the language to make it much more clear about how we handle allegations of harassment with employees, and this has been vetted with the attorney as well as our Human Resources Department.
Questions, consent? Consent, Ms. Gordon.
Thank you.
Number 3.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Brad Johnson to come forward and bring agenda item number 3.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, agenda item number 3 is a recommendation for an approval of a loan for Pebblebrook High School band uniforms. In accordance with Board Policy DI, Fiscal Accounting and Reporting, a short-term loan program is available for assisting high schools with the purchase of marching band uniforms. Pebblebrook High School is requesting a loan in the amount of $24,799.82 to be repaid over the next 5 school years. Administration recommends that the board approve the loan for Pebblebrook High School.
Ms. Johnson, consent? Consent, Lynn.
And then once again, ask Mr. York to come and bring the administrative rule modifications.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you've been given several administrative rules for review. Summer is a time that we try to go through those and have them ready for the beginning of the school year. Here, just to answer any questions you may have on those.
Any questions? Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You never look over here, so I feel like maybe, I've done something. So, but thank you. Mr. York, real curiosity question, and maybe for everyone. And I guess it's also related to agenda item 2, and I was going to kind of let it pass, but since it's down in the chart also, on the harassment and equal opportunity employment, those two, in my mind, and Mr. Doyle can correct me if I'm wrong, they seem to be like potentially legal, legal landmines very quickly if we're not careful. So how did we have a committee that looked at that, or do we have a staff looking at it, and then it's run by legal? What is the process, generally speaking, without getting too far in the woods?
Yes, sir. We had staff look through that and then ran that through legal. What you've got here is language that meets federal law, state law. What we found was that there was some language about how you investigate allegations in 2 different policies, 2 different rules, and we just try to align those two. So you've got one that's about being an equal opportunity employer, and then if you feel that you have been harassed, then there's another rule that takes you through that process of how you file a grievance and that type thing.
Okay, thank you, and appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Consent?
Well, I'm sorry. I misspoke. We don't vote on this. Administrative rule.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right, then. We have approval of the agenda, if there's no objection. The agenda's approved. And I needed a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, land, and legal too, and legal. Ms. Thayer? Okay, we got all 4. Ms. Thayer has made the motion. Mr. Sweeney has seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We are now adjourned to go to executive session. We'll return at 7 o'clock.